The path from bulky, black dial-up phones to pocket-sized mobile devices, or from hefty in-house storage units to cloud computing, may have been longer were it not for some critical policy victories in Washington during the 1970s. The political odds were indeed stacked against CCIA founders when they moved to the nation's capital in 1975. Armed with little more than their vision for a better tech industry, they were about to take on Washington politics and some very big companies that had amassed huge lobbying power in town.
What made it unique was entrepreneurs with small amounts of capital going after the king. And as my dad said, if you're going to try to kill the king, you have to be prepared to die.
As the government investigated IBM, CCIA crafted a white paper that helped ensure the Justice Department held IBM to its agreement to separate the hardware and software industries, a move many credit with the rise of Silicon Valley and the U.S. dominance in the tech industry.
Because all of a sudden you were allowed to sell software or create software and run it on other hardware machines.
I think it's extraordinary how the industry's evolved, and it is awful to imagine if they'd failed.
I think we have that edge now because we don't have two dominant players that control the pace of innovation.
CCIA also helped when the government later broke up AT&T in 1982. That facilitated the rise of competition in long-distance voice and data services, telecom devices, and early information portals like CompuServe and AOL. A competitive mobile phone service market soon followed.
It's really highly unlikely that we would have seen that kind of rapid evolution had you not had a breakup, an interference with the power monopoly of AT&T.
Everything blossomed in communications after that. And as far as I'm concerned, nobody deserves more credit than CCIA.
These were not the last of CCIA's antitrust battles. In the 1990s, the association filed court briefs with examples of anti-competitive behavior by Microsoft, and we filed similar briefs the following decade as Intel tried to block chip-making competitors. Through these efforts, CCIA has earned a reputation as a steady advocate for a level playing field in the industry.
Would you say that they are the 800-pound gorilla right now?
That's probably underestimating their weight.
Even earlier, opening the investment market gave smaller companies cash infusion they could use to innovate, but that required an act of Congress that CCIA helped advocate.
In order to get a flow of capital into our companies, we went to work to make people in the Congress and the administration understand that it was prudent to make as much money as you could make with our companies.
Another important battle in Congress involved opening doors to government contracting. With the help of then Judiciary Chairman Jack Brooks, CCIA played a pivotal role in lobbying for the Competition in Contracting Act.
The thing that they worked on that had a very positive effect for firms like us was to get the government to be able to legally extend their contract period beyond 1 year.
CCIA next turned its attention to trade.
So again, we became the advocates of openness, of fairness, of making sure that it was a level playing field for people to compete in. That's true in the international trade world, it's true in the federal procurement world. We got deeply in the export control battle.
CCIA was, if not the most active, certainly one of the most active trade associations in promoting free trade, in promoting the GATT, in promoting the creation of the WTO.
In advocating on trade matters, CCIA seized on export control laws as a tool for change.
So we tried to exert relentless pressure on the government to change the administration of the law. We didn't particularly try to change the law itself because we didn't want to be unpatriotic. We didn't want to sell important things to Russia.
Another early battle for CCIA was promoting interoperability by getting laws changed to allow reverse engineering, In the 1980s, CCIA hosted a meeting of the 20 largest tech companies on the urgent need for true open systems interconnection.
CCIA was in the forefront of creating an environment for open systems and convincing the major users that if we could get the industry, that is the non-IBM, part of the industry, to commit to using open standards, they would have a marketplace where things came faster and were cheaper.
Many consider the open system as one of CCIA's most important contributions to the industry. Meanwhile, the 1990s brought the evolution of the personal computer and the internet.
I view CCIA as sort of three different entities over time. And in the mid-90s, the issue that CCIA was helping us with was procurement regulations. The latter part of the 90s, CCIA, as the internet picked up speed, as you had software companies coming online left and right, CCIA's key role, in my view in those days, wasn't arguing against a big IBM or a big Microsoft. The key role was CCIA was educating folks on the Hill, both in the House and Senate, as to information technology issues. In the 2002, 2006, 7 time frame, the CCIA went back to sort of its roots. It got formed originally to take on IBM and their power in the marketplace.
Running throughout our efforts over the decades is a search for balance, whether the topic is competition or intellectual property rules covering copyright and patents. Marty Getz, a data research company executive who served on CCIA's board in 1979, holds the first ever software patent.
Too many companies are applying for patents where there's no invention. Just automating a manual process on a computer and you happen to be the first one to do it does not mean you invented anything. There's so many things you can do on a computer. So unfortunately, the patent office and the examiners really are not qualified to really determine what is obvious and what is not. In fact, back in, I think, 2006 or 2009, CCIA wrote a brief when there was to the Supreme Court when there was discussion about obviousness. Trade associations and CCIA in particular have been very effective in working with the government.
What patents were, let's say, 100 years ago, and they were for a single invention, and so you had one patent, one product. You realize today something like one of these smartphones is so full of technology. There may be 1,000 or 10,000 patents that are existing in that, and you can't obviously pay everybody 10 cents.
Before most other companies understood that there was a problem, CCIA was already working to create balance in the copyright laws, making sure that the rights of copyright owners were appropriately protected, but that the rights of users were also well understood and accounted for.
Balance in copyright law is critical to internet companies and users alike. CCIA pushed for this in the Digital Millennium Copyright Act and strongly supported Senator Wyden's addition of liability protection for internet services and sites. CCIA has encouraged the U.S. Trade Representative to expand intermediary liability limitations, along with other provisions against internet censorship as future trade agreements are negotiated. And we fought the various attempts by movie and music producers to remove these liability protections in proposed legislation like SOPA and PIPA.
Particularly, I want to thank CCIA for your work early on with SOPA and PIPA. You made a difference in communicating how important it was to keep communications open, to keep the internet free.
CCIA served on the State Department delegation in December 2012 to the World Conference on International Telecommunications meeting in Dubai as part of its decades-long effort to strengthen cross-border data flows and establish universal access to an open internet.
CCIA is dedicated to fighting gatekeepers of internet access, whether it's a national government or a private corporation trying to control the free flow of information to and from end users on the open internet. In defeating the proposed takeover of T-Mobile by AT&T in 2011, we successfully argued that no private duopoly should dominate Americans' mobile access to the internet.
As CCIA marks its 40th year in Washington, we are still taking on battles together with our teams in Brussels and Geneva that at first glance seem politically impossible. However, together with our allies, we are still winning these tough fights that benefit consumers, create a more level playing field for our members, for our industry, and for those next generation companies that have yet to make it out of the garage or dorm room.